All right, it's just preparing to go live. And we're live. Hello and welcome to Kirtan London Journey to Joy podcast, episode number 12, with today's hosts, who are myself, Madhva, and I'm joined by a very special guest again today, who's joining us for the second time, who is Martin Hausner, aka Mahatma Prabhu, who is an extremely scholarly teacher of the Bhakti tradition. So the Bhakti Yoga tradition, which we're discussing, the Bhagavad Gita, he's been studying it for almost all of his life, not only studying it, but sharing it. So we're very grateful to have Mahatma with us today. Thank you so much. Today's episode is called Our Ultimate Refuge, and we're going to be looking at the second half of chapter 7. So 2 weeks ago, we did the first half. We'll be picking up from roughly midway through the chapter where we left off. But before we do that, as always, I will start with an invocation prayer to ground us, to bring our minds present. Ultimately, this podcast attempt is something that we're trying to create a space for those of us who want to go deeper into this spiritual knowledge so that we can do that together. And an invocation is an essential part of starting this kind of process. So these are mantras that we chant to ask for blessings from our teachers and to show gratitude to our teachers for this beautiful philosophy process that we have. So I'll start with it. If you know it and you want to chant it along with me, please do that. You can ground yourself with me, and then we'll get started. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you again, Mahatma Prabhu. Genuinely very grateful. I know you're very busy. Thank you for making the time to spend this time diving a little deeper with us.
So I think we left off I think we're ready for verse 14.
Exactly that. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to read it, and this verse is going to take a little while, maybe.
Take all the time you need. All you, Prabhu.
This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So what is Krishna talking about in terms of the energy that's difficult to overcome? He's talking about it's difficult to overcome death. But I mean, we all know that. But what Krishna is talking about is not just overcoming death, but overcoming rebirth. So we're in a cycle of birth and death. And so Krishna is saying, nobody can get out of that cycle on their own, by their own strength. He's also saying that the forces of this world, which cause us to act in ways which go against our intelligence, desire, common sense, etc., to be impelled by desire, by hatred, by anger, by envy, and all that, said nobody can perfectly conquer that. I think we may have talked about that in the last class, how some people try and they can do it for a while. but not permanently. I give so many classes, I can't remember. Did we talk about that last class?
I think we touched on it. We touched on the three modes. Yeah.
Yeah. So effort on our own is insufficient. We need help as well. Not that effort is not important. I think I gave the example, you're trying to lift weights. I give classes almost every day, so that I can't remember where I gave this example, but you're lifting a weight and it's too heavy for you and someone comes from behind you.
You did say this, you said this.
Yeah. And grabs, and so now you can do it. So Krishna is saying, you cannot lift those weights without my help. That's what he's saying. And so it's best to see this as a law. This is just what is. Nobody can make life eternal. We can last. Well, the soul is eternal, but nobody can make the physical body last eternally. We can last longer. Yogis can last longer. Yogis can last hundreds of years, but it can't be permanent. So he's making simple statements like, you cannot turn matter into something which will never be destroyed. It's its nature to change and be destroyed. And there are laws of nature which are not debatable. We studied them in school. There's no controversy over the fact that if you jump out of the first floor of a building, you'll go down. There's no, there may be extenuating circumstances where the wind comes and pushes you up to the second floor. But the laws of gravity are working. So no one has to debate that. That's a reality. So when Krishna says certain things in the Gita, if we take it as a religious text, we think, well, that's the Indian point of view, or that's the Hindu point of view, or that's the Bhagavad Gita's point of view. But there are many things that Krishna says which aren't points of view. It's just matter of fact statement. This is how the traffic light is red. It just is. Don't drive through it if you value your car and your life like that. So my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, used to say, don't see this as religion, see this as a science. Why do you say religion? Gravity works for, in case you didn't notice, gravity works for Christians also, not just Hindus or Muslims, right? You notice that?
Right.
You notice that gravity works for, even works for people who don't have religion. Yeah, you notice that, right?
I've noticed. I'm smart enough to have noticed that.
So there are certain things Krishna says in the Gita that my spiritual master described as certifications. Krishna has certified, it's like this, stamp, certified. This is how it is, always was, it is now, always will be. We have a story, or many stories actually, in some of our books, specifically Srimad Bhagavatam and also Ramayana, some of you know, of people who decided, we're going to try to go against this and we're not going to die. So they made a plan how they're going to do this, get some blessing or take some elixir or go to the gym every day, or, whatever. Now they didn't go to the gym, but they chant some mantra, get some blessing, take, this or that. And they always failed. And the point being that there is a way to do that, but it's not by fighting the forces of this world. It's by transcending those. And so Krishna is saying, by my help, you'll transcend. But if you try to fight, you can't lift that. You can't lift those weights. Don't try. But if I come and help you, you can. So those of us who practice bhakti, we have this experience that we're doing things, at least for me, because I wasn't born into this. I'm doing things that I couldn't do before I began bhakti. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried. And so what Krishna is saying in this verse, he's basically saying, I've designed the world in a way that unless you get my help, you can't get out of it. You won't be able to figure it out. And what's the proof of that? Well, one proof is look in the mirror. We're still here. That's a good proof, right? That of this verse, isn't it? Like I'm still here after how many lifetimes? Well, the soul's eternal. How many lifetimes? Get out your iPhone and put in about 10 quadzillion zeros, and you're just getting warm in the number of lifetimes. So we're still here. it's like you're 82 years old and you haven't got your bachelor's degree. Like you need help. Maybe no, I'll do it myself. No, you need a counselor. You need a tutor. No, I'll do it myself. Everyone would say, what a fool he is. He needs help. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in a physical body again. And we have not figured out how to get out of it. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a few verses. Okay. I won't read the verses in between because I want to jump.
I had one question on this. Okay. Is now a good time, or is this connected to what you want to say?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I like this point. However, in my head, I'm hearing a potential pushback against it. So I like this because to me, when I hear that we need help, there's something beautiful about it. I've been raised in the Bhakti tradition, and so I appreciate it for its beauty in that this idea of Krishna loves us and wants to help us, wants to give us blessings, mercy, etc.
Yes.
However, there's a Western mentality, what I would call a Western mentality, cultural pushback that I could imagine people have hearing this, which is we've been trained we can do it alone.
Yeah.
And when we're told you can't, we think, well, screw you, we can. So
you're going to tell me I can't do it. You don't know who I am. Yeah.
And I feel like you've explained it really well already. But if there's anything you would add, maybe specifically to an argument like that, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah. So we're trying on our own. And how's that working? Birth, old age, disease, and death, millions of times. How's that working for you? I mean, if you're okay with that, then you're okay with it. But there is something better. And so Krishna's trying to awaken us to the realization that there is something better and you don't have to go through this cycle anymore. And I can help you get out of it. But if you don't take my help, the proof is in the pudding. You're still here. And Krishna's saying, I can guarantee you, you tried. Especially if you're in this Bhagavad Gita class and you're interested, you were trying in your last life. You definitely were trying. You understood. If you're here now, that means you understood in your last life there's something more than getting old and dying and working hard and taking a few vacation, taking 2 weeks off a year and working hard for 40 years. There's something more than that. And you know that all your attempts to be happy kind of leave you like not completely happy, not completely satisfied. That. That's why you're here. That's why you come to Kirtan. That's why you listen to Bhagavad Gita, read other spiritual books. So the point is you have tried, and not only your last life. And the evidence, the physical body that we have now is the evidence that we felt that on our own, we can get. I know where you're going with this. I don't want to say you can't get anywhere on your own. And that's not what Krishna's saying.
Right.
It's like you can get to the border of this country on your own, but to get in, they're not going to let you in because it's COVID, blah, 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 blah. But I am the, vice chancellor of that country. If you go with me, I can get you in. That's what Krishna's saying. It's like there's a certain point you hit a wall. You can go far on your own, but to transcend death permanently, there's an actual process to do that. And that process requires getting instruction and guidance from me and from a spiritual master. And then you can do it. That's what he's saying. So it's just meant to deal with.
I appreciate that last caveat you gave as well. That it's nice because it also shows that we're not helpless. And in fact, we do have to do some work. We have to work.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to.
But that point you made is very Yeah, very accurate sounded.
It's kind of like tools which are, I forget the word. You have tools that are hard to use, but they become easy because they use something like hydraulic. Yeah, they're hydraulic, right? So you're jacking up a car, something's hydraulic. So it's much easier. So maybe on your own with a normal tool, you wouldn't be able to, or it'd be more difficult. You wouldn't be able to do it. Let's say, for the sake of example, you couldn't get a job done with a certain tool because it's too difficult. You don't have the
Right.
strength. With a hydraulic tool, you could do it. So it's something like that. Krishna is saying, well, that's why I was going to go to verse 19. Krishna was saying,
please.
many, many births and deaths it takes, go around, 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 before one understands who I am. And then we read, I think it was the third verse, we read, many hundreds of thousands of out of many hundreds of thousands. Hardly anyone is really on the spiritual path, and those on the spiritual path, hardly one come to perfection. And so that's another way of saying the same thing. You can get close on your own, but if you want to escape the cycle of birth and death, Krishna is saying there's a certain way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. And my point earlier was, when Krishna says this, we should see it, at least theoretically, at least accept it in theory to understand what he's saying, that this is just how it is. It's not my opinion. It's not this religion's better than that one. Your God can beat up my God. None of that. It's just see it as this is just how the universe works. There's no word for religion in scriptures. It's not, there were no religions in the world when Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. So he's speaking of philosophy of life. He's speaking of science. You could call it science of spirituality. But if we see it in that context, then maybe we can get rid of, it's religion and I don't want that. No, it's not that. If you can see it as, he's just stating, this is what it's like. If you want to get to Scotland from London, you better go north, because if you go south, you won't get there. Well, I'll find it any way I go. No, you won't. You have to go north. Well, how do you know? Because I'm from Scotland. I'm from Scotland, So I know where it is. I know it's north. I know what motorway you have to take. It's like that, right? So my spiritual master used to say, he would say, come on, look, how do you learn anything? You go to an expert.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing I'm hearing is that really, if you're serious about taking to a spiritual path, because like you said, you've tried it other ways and you've realized what I'm doing isn't working, then, and this is actually something I've had to accept as well, even though I was raised in this culture, even me, I feel like I have this mentality of I can do anything myself, but at a certain point, you have to be humble. That's what humility is. Humility means realizing and acknowledging and accepting, I can't do everything myself. I do need help. And so
get a PhD yourself, but to go beyond birth and death, you're going to need help. We have to know the limits of what we can do. We're not saying you can't.
Yeah.
But where does it stop that by your own effort, it's like, that's not enough. Right, that's the point.
So that humility aspect needs to come in to then be able to make, and when you bring that in sincerely, then that's where you will actually start to flourish very quickly and profoundly.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at another way. We've all heard of spiritual master. So one could say, well, I want to do it myself. Why do I need a spiritual master? My spiritual master said, a spiritual master is one who is ahead of you on the path where you want to go. So so, hey, I'm 10 steps ahead of you. Come this, you're going, should I go left or go right? No, I can see the road is here. Or even a better example, he's come back from where you want to go to meet you. He knows the road. You're thinking left, right? I don't know. I'm not sure. No, I've come back to meet you from this road. I know how. Doesn't mean I'm better than you because I'm in the position of spiritual master. It just means by some grace, I've gotten there. And so I can help you. Mm-hmm. So then you might say, well, I want to do it on my own. Yeah, but then you may take a left turn for 3 lifetimes. and
Yeah.
then a right turn for 3 light. So, like you said, humble,
I love that analogy, by the way. There's someone who's been there, they've come back to meet you and help you along the way.
yeah.
I've not heard it like
So,
that before. It's really
yeah.
nice.
So my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, his point was, so many things you do, you get guidance from someone who knows how to do it instead of figuring it out yourself. And you might say, well, there's a lot of people who became virtuoso musicians and they did it themselves. That's true. But this is different. This has limitations. We have limitations.
Yeah.
To understand spiritual knowledge and ultimately to free ourselves from death, we have limitations that we can only go so far. That's the point. And so then it's confirmed in the 19th verse where Krishna is saying, after many, many births and deaths, one finally comes to understand me and surrender to me, to know who I am. But we could take lifetimes and lifetimes, even from the point of once you come to knowledge, if you get some enlightenment, but it's not complete, then you're going to struggle on your own. So you said something that is so important. You said there has to be some humility. And in the 13th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, humility is the qualification for knowledge. So why would that be? Because if I think I know everything, I can't learn anything. The example, empty your cup so I can pour in the liquid of knowledge. So I think you're reflecting that. I want to reflect on what you said, because I think part of the reason people think I want to do it my way is because there have been so many people coming along as gurus, one who have knowledge that actually don't. They may not know as much as you know, and they may tell you to turn left when you should go straight because they didn't even know. So that fear is normal, right? I mean, after going to university for a few years, my thought was nobody knows anything here.
Right. We
developed just how I used to think.
Trust.
Yeah, I was like, well, they're all as ignorant as everybody else. I mean, we're all limited. We're not omniscient. So you go, this is the respected, professor so-and-so at Oxford, and you listen to him and say, okay, it was good, but there are a few things he said that just, I think, are wrong or show some limitation or whatever. And so naturally, doubt, like, does anybody know anything? And so why should I follow a guru? Because how is it that he's smarter than I am? But one thing, he's heard from people smarter than all of us. That's number one. And because he's followed and become enlightened, quote unquote, he's getting spiritual guidance from within that we can also get from within when we're in a higher state, but presently we're not there. So let's say I'm following this path longer than you. So I've got some realization that could only come in time. You wouldn't get it in the beginning. But I could share that with you so that you get it now. And I tell you, well, in 10 years, you would get this realization, but you can get it, but I'll give it to you now. That'll save you 10 years. Well, that's good. I'd like to learn that. This took me 25 years. You're doing your TED Talk. I studied this for 25 years. And in 17 minutes, you get 25 years of what they did research. Well, that's a blessing, isn't it? So it's something like that the spiritual master has followed his guru, who knows infinitely more than any of us are going to know until we hear from them. And he's got realization of what's been taught on a very deep level, much deeper than we could expect to have in the beginning. So it's kind of, as we say, a no-brainer. Why not take guidance from them? It's like, okay, I always think, I'm a musician, so I always think music examples, but my music examples are all from the 60s. Well, you have Eric Clapton. Okay. So Eric Clapton's still around, right? He still performs?
Yeah, I I know of who he is. So
Yeah, Eric Clapton, from the 60s, and he still seems to be still out there. So he's like one of the best rock and roll guitarists out there, right? So if your father was friends with Eric Clapton and you said, hey, can he give me a lesson? And Eric Clapton said, yeah, you'd be pretty excited. Like, wow, I'm going to learn things that I probably could never figure out in this life, or maybe it would take me 50 years. Something like that. And then all of a sudden, you're this 13-year-old boy who's been playing guitar a year, and now you start sounding like Eric Clapton. Like, how did that happen? Well, he showed me how to do it. I would have never known. So that's how teaching works, isn't it? Once you learn it, it's like, oh yeah, this is simple, except you would never would have figured it out.
yes,
You ever have that experience? You ever learn something is like, why didn't I think of that?
all the time.
Yeah, it's so simple, but you'll never figure it out until you hear it.
Just now, I've transitioned for work from having a Windows laptop to an Apple Mac computer, and it's got so much potential, and I have no idea how to use it. But I have a work colleague who's had one for years, knows everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And I spend 5 minutes with him, and I learned so much about this thing like that that I would never figure out.
Yeah, right. It's like a different language, basically.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I know. I have Mac and PC, so I know the difference.
Sorry, let you finish. Okay.
Go ahead. No.
I just wanted to appreciate one thing you said, because I think it's so true, which is this idea that we often have a resistance to this idea of guru, of senior teacher, submitting ourselves to someone, or surrendering, using that word surrender, to someone, because we have bad experiences. We live in a world where we are led by, generally, we see fools and rascals. Maybe that's a very in-house way of saying it. But there's a lot of distrust. I feel it towards a lot of leadership within the world. You see governments there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of corruption amongst leaders. You see it left, right, and center. The most senior people of political areas or large companies, you hear about them being corrupt, et cetera, et cetera. So we have this resistance to accepting someone else above us. And I've had this resistance myself, and it still comes up. And one thing that I come back to is your spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, because he was impeccable. His character was impeccable. And so you see someone who actually inspires trust. And then we're told in the Vedic books, the literature, the scripture, these are the qualities of the person, that if you see these qualities, it means you could trust this person.
Yes.
Right. And he displayed all of them. And that gives me faith. I think, no, actually he's doing the things that I want to do. He's living that life. He's clearly exemplary in all of these things. I trust him. Wow. I trust him.
There's something else. And this can sound a bit unscientific to the scientifically minded. Mm-hmm. This could sound a bit flaky to the logical people, but there isn't, when you're in the presence of someone on a very high spiritual level, there is something that transforms within you that's tangible. It's not, well, I just believed and therefore it happened. You will see arise in your detachment, arise in your compassion, arise in an increase in spiritual desire. They're tangible things. They're not just, I felt this when I saw him. No, there are measurable things. I saw him and I stopped smoking cigarettes the next day. How? I don't know. It's just my heart changed. I mean, things like that.
Right.
And it's not like one off. Well, it just happened once. No, it happens all the time.
I've experienced something like that, I feel.
Yeah. Or we felt this very strong desire to sacrifice our own selfish interest in service when we saw him, and everybody was feeling it and everybody's doing it. So I think that's also important as a test. It's not just this person says I'm a guru and I have knowledge. And like you said, you can see it in his qualities. And also you can see it in the effect that he has on you.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of us, I mean, look at the Hare Krishna movement started in the 60s in America. Americans are not famous for being humble. I mean, you British are more humble than we are. We're just like in your face, tell it like it is, right? At least you have some etiquette. If you don't like somebody, you're still nice to them. At least you pretend to be, you have some etiquette, whatever. We don't even pretend. We're just like, whatever. I'll just tell you what you're like. That's Americans. The best country, most powerful, we think, America, you know what Americans are like. They just think they're like God's gift to the universe. So
I think only you're allowed to say that in this room.
Only am I allowed to say that. And I just allowed you to say it by saying, I know you think that way. You have to think that way because it's true. It's just is. That's how, Americans think. America is the United States is the center of the universe. Everybody knows that, right? All the planets float around the United States. So here you have that's just general America. Then you have this very revolutionary movement. And you've probably heard that amongst the hippies, there was a statement, don't trust anyone over 30, because we were all like teenagers or early 20s. So 30 was like another third. If you're 20, do the math of how old you are now, divide it into thirds. So 30 was like a third up. So for me, that would add, like my life now, that would add like 25 more years like that. So it was these are adults. We don't trust them. Don't question authority. Revolution, lot of demonstrations against status quo, And then here he comes in talking about authority, submission, humility. How could he pull that off? It seems impossible. He pulled that off with the very people who said, don't trust over 30, questioned authority, who were turning against everything mainstream.
So true.
And it was what he was saying, they never heard. He was telling them things that they wanted, that they needed to learn, that they wanted to learn, that they never would have learned in school from their parents. As he said, he was exhibiting the qualities of what he taught. So what he was teaching, he was, so they could see this is not some idea, he actually is it. And by his presence, they were changing, which gave them tangible experience. This is real. That's how it happened. So those were the most skeptic people you could ever choose. Within the last century or so, they're probably the most skeptical people. And they were the ones that said, I want to follow you. I'll do whatever you say. Complete shift, right?
Right.
So I just wanted to let all the skeptics know that the biggest skeptics became some of the biggest followers because he answered all their questions. And he lived what he talked. And he was able to deliver a lifestyle of knowledge that actually changed people's hearts in a way that they couldn't change themselves. So everything I'm saying was their experience. That's my point.
So just quickly as well, I'm sure everyone I know everyone in the room knows, but if there's anyone listening to this episode and you're just hearing about this spiritual teacher that we're talking about for the first time, Srila Prabhupada, who is Mahatma's guru, Mahatma was served him personally for some years before Prabhupada left the planet. And we're discussing his book right now. His teachings are still available to us, which is why people are still having their lives transformed he left an almost unlimited, a very, very profound amount of literature, of writing, spiritual teaching. So that's what we're discussing at the moment, this Bhagavad Gita as it is, where there's 18 chapters. We're currently in chapter 7. I feel like we've taken a really beautiful slight detour from the chapter and we've gone down the guru discussion, but it's been really nice. It's been really important. It's been really relevant. And I feel like we've flushed out some really nice stuff. So thank you for that.
And also, I mean, then the next question is, why would someone become a guru? Because it's kind of you might think, well, this guy thinks he knows everything. He can be a guru, and people just have to do what he says. Because he's been given something that works. He's been given a medicine that works. It's like asking, why would someone be a doctor? Because he knows how to heal people. It's not that he's proud, ostentatious. He actually wants to serve people. So that's the idea. So when someone has been given something that has changed their life, he's giving it to others, it's changing their lives. And then his spiritual master says, now it's your duty to guide other people with what I've given you. Then he becomes guru. But his mentality is not that I am better than anyone. His mentality is that I've been given a gift. It's not my gift. I've been given a gift. I've understood how to use the gift. And now my service to others is to give them the same gift that has changed my life and changed the lives of millions of people. So he's totally in the mood of servant. It's not, well, if I have a guru, he's just going to be a slave driver or whatever. And, I have to kiss his feet. It's not like that. That's not a real guru is not in that mood. He's in the mood. How can I help you? How can I serve you? So he's more of a servant to his disciples than they are to him.
Beautiful point. Yeah, I love that. And I love that's something that Prabhupada would often say, isn't it? When he would be complimented or when he was asked why, his whole mood and mentality was he was serving his guru.
Yes, yes.
And that was very, very prominent for him.
Well, now we're talking a little bit about why there would be reluctance to take a guru. And in the next verse, Krishna talks about why there would be reluctance to do what he said in the verse before that. Like you won't cross over the cycle of birth and death, samsara, without my help. And the next verse is, why wouldn't somebody want his help? And the next verse is, why somebody would want his help. This is kind of interesting. And before I discuss them, I just want to, I want to say what I was thinking the other day. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen an interview with like an 11-year-old and he's got an idea for a business that'll like put Google and Microsoft, into bankruptcy when he's old enough to do it? You ever seen these? And then you ask them, you're like amazed. How does this 11-year-old or 13-year-old, even 15-year-old, how did he get this idea? It's brilliant. And he's got it all figured out in the systems, and he's already got his MA and he's 15. And then if you investigate it, you'll see that when he was 5 or 6, he was already thinking like this. He didn't have all the details filled in, but he was 5 or 6 and he was thinking like that. Have you ever seen an interview like that with some little kid? And he's like, I don't even know what he's talking about. And he's 6 years old. Or there was a kid who was like a multimillionaire through investments. He was like 11 and he, figured out the whole stock market. And like I said, that kid who's, maybe you've seen that YouTube video, this Chinese boy, virtuoso pianist. And he plays, he wears a tuxedo, he takes a bow. It's like he's been doing that forever, and he just showed up in this life and he just does it again. Recently, I was watching, well, not recently, but periodically, I follow people who are very good at what they do. And you get this pattern. The first time I walked in the gym, I felt I was home. I wanted to be a gymnast. The first time I walked into the boxing arena, the first time I saw people surfing, I went to the ocean, I knew this is what I want to do. I mean, isn't it? The first time I saw Eric Clapton play the guitar, I knew that's what I want to do. Or the first time I saw a guitar, I said, this is me. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm envious of people like that because I've been confused my whole life. What do I want to do?
You just haven't done it enough yet. So how did they get so good at it? Many lifetimes of practice, right? They've just been around doing it. You don't develop a company like Microsoft or Apple, in one lifetime. It's you're just taking off where you left off in your last lifetime. You're just, you're 6 years old and you're thinking how to put Google out of business. Because when you died at 78, that's what you were thinking. You had an idea, you just couldn't carry it out. You didn't have enough time, or you tried and it didn't work. So in these verses, Krishna is saying that we are very ambitious. We want to do many things, and we keep coming back to do them again and again and again until we awaken some sense of spirituality that there's something more than this. But the problem is that if there's not enough spiritual practice in our past lives, we never come to that point of thinking, okay, what's the point of all this? What, I'm just working. Okay, maybe I'll start something. I'll put Google out of business. Then what? Then what do I do? Well, I can go home and count all my money. All right. After you count your $15 billion, then what do you do? Well, I guess I can just get old and die. Basically, right? Can build a lot of vacation houses, have fun, but I'm still going to get old and die. So when you evolve spiritually, at some point, you start thinking, oh, like, what's the point? The power of now. I say the power of now what? Now you got your 15 billion. Now what? Now you're famous. Now what? Like, what's left to do, right? Well, what's left to do is take the journey within. So all of us who come to the spiritual path have come to that point from past lives. And until we come to that point, no matter how much spiritual knowledge we have, it won't make sense. I'll just go, oh, there's no God. It's just your belief. It's not scientific. You're just hairy-fairy stuff, get real. You're not grounded. That's how we'll think. And we'll just work hard at becoming successful at things we did in our last life that we were successful at, which brought us into this life because we were never satisfied. We always want to keep doing better and better. So Krishna is saying that this cycle of birth and death happens because of a lack of spiritual consciousness, because it's just, we just keep going, thinking, I can be better, bigger, more this, more that. And that's the point is, that's why spiritual knowledge makes sense to so many people. And that's why it doesn't make sense to so many people, because just like that little kid who's going to put Google out of business and he's got the idea when he's 6, there's plenty of people who are that way spiritually. When they're 7, 8 years old, you're thinking, what are you going to do? And think, find the meaning of life. That's what's most important. I mean, I think we're all like that. It took me till like I was 17. And then at that point, it's like, why do anything? You got to find the meaning of life. Mm-hmm. Where did that come from? I didn't even read a book that said that. Where did it come from? Because I was doing that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us are going to go through and not do it. And we're going to keep crashing. At some point, the lights are going to go off. We're going to come into a life and say, okay, I need a guru. We won't even know what happened in the past. It's all going to be subconscious. It's all going to be, put in there from lifetimes. But in some life, we're like, what are you going to do? You're like 14 years old and like, I need a guru. I got to find a guru. Like, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. So it's not like you can force it, but I just wanted to say that if you have lots and lots of doubts, it can be reflected on what was going on in so many past lives.
Right.
So in those verses, Krishna is saying why someone continues to have these doubts, because they're basically he's just still trying to play God, still trying to get ahead on this level. And that's where he's at. And like, okay, that's how we learn. We do things, we crash, we burn, or we become successful. Mm-hmm. At the end of our life, we say, I helped a lot of people. I lived a great life. But if I don't have like the answer to what lies beyond, there's this emptiness. Like, I'm leaving and I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's on the other side. I don't even know who I am. So
it's really strange for me personally, being of this way inclined, that I feel as though almost a majority, actually, I don't know, because there's a lot of religious people out there who think like this, even outside of the bhakti community. But there's so many people that this thought never crosses their mind. Why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? You say something like that to them, and who cares? We're here. Get on with it.
Yeah,
For me, it's just meaningless unless there's meaning, right?
Well, I would say, having said what I said, I think it's partially the fault of our educational system because we don't cultivate that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, in one sense, it's kind of natural just to think this is everything, right? Because our educational system is telling you just get ahead, get educated, become successful. So
Right.
it's not saying question that paradigm. It's saying go for it.
Right.
It's not saying, it's saying, well, maybe there's another life. Nobody knows. It's not scientific, just, hunker up down here and make it happen. So we're trained that way. And everywhere around there's this social pressure to be successful. Because if you're successful, then what happens? People will look at you and go, hey, I like you. You're successful, right? Do you need a Rolls Royce? No. Do you need that watch with the Rolex watch? No, you don't need it. But society's telling you if you have it, you'll be happy because people will respect you. So it's understandable that we can get caught up in that because we haven't been educated. And here's an interesting thing about a spiritual master, which is also what Krishna is doing. Spiritual master's job is to pop bubbles. That's what he does. So you're thinking like this, pop. And so some people,
I love that,
as you know, don't want their bubbles popped because when your bubbles popped, it's like, now that's not fun. I was living in an illusion thinking A, B, and C was going to happen, although it was never going to happen. But at least it got me out of bed, believing it would happen. And the guru comes and goes, no, it's not going to happen. I'm like, I don't want to hear from you. You're just depressing. But when you're a little more evolved and the guru pops your bubble, you're like, thank you.
Yes.
I knew something was wrong and you clarified it.
Yes. And it can be painful. But again, anyone who's been through pain and worked through it and not just denied it and tried to run away from it, but acknowledged it and worked through it, has seen that that's led them somewhere better. Generally, that's been my experience, even on a material level. So you apply that here as well. You have your bubble popped, burst, and you are able to accept it and work through it. It's leading you somewhere greater.
Yeah. You're not going south. You're not going south to Scotland anymore.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
The guru is saying, no, Scotland's north. Don't tell me where to go. I'll figure it out myself. Yeah, great. You'll end up in the ocean, but not So what's the point? You end up at Brighton Beach. Is Brighton Beach in the south? Where is Brighton?
Yes, Brighton's the south. Yeah.
You'll end up in Brighton Beach instead of Glasgow. So, sometimes it's like you say, sometimes it's hard to take spiritual guidance, but when you do, it's rewarding because you realize that your spiritual master is shining light on all the dark areas of your life and showing you so many things you couldn't know. I mean, that was my realization. When I read Bhagavad Gita, I said, there's so many things in here I couldn't know. I mean, I kind of knew them, but I didn't really know them. I kind of sensed them. But to get the details, I couldn't have known that. It's beyond the capacity of my own limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what Krishna is saying in the next few verses, he's describing why people don't take up spiritual life. And basically he's saying all the things that we're talking about. Well, I just want to be God, basically, and I don't want anybody telling me, and I want to figure it all out myself. So he's saying, if you surrender to me, you'll overcome the cycle of birth and death. But this is why you wouldn't surrender, because you think you know everything. You just want to, get ahead at any cost.
Right.
Namam duskritina mudha. Yeah, you want to deny the existence of God at any cost. God is dead, he died, with the last scientific theory that put him out. That isn't it, Hey, we killed God. What did you kill him with? our latest theory, he's dead now. He can't show his face, Now we realize how the universe came into being and how it works. You don't need God anymore. That was just a false crutch because you couldn't figure it out. Those kinds of people, the diehard. You ever seen the diehard atheists? I think you have a few in your country, right? Some of the biggest and best and baddest, right? And I've seen some interviews with them, and I've always noticed they don't look happy.
I think the same thing, strangely enough.
Quite disturbed by the idea of, when you talk about believing in God, it disturbs them a lot. So that's what Krishna is saying in these verses, that, when you don't come to me, it's not because you're smart. It's because you're not spiritually evolved. Mm-hmm. And you're still playing this game that you want to be me. You want to be God. That's why. And it's ironic because so many people think I'm not spiritual because I'm intelligent. It's the foolish people. And Krishna is saying, no, you're fooling yourself. That's why. Mm-hmm. So, it's just interesting to see. And then he says, and then he explains that there's some spiritual or pious background in past lives that causes people to naturally be inclined to think of God. Even when things are bad, they'll think, oh, now I need God's help more. Where without that backing or that background, when things are bad, you become an atheist or agnostic. How could God allow this to happen? So Krishna is explaining what you've done in the past has this huge effect on your philosophy of life. You're not objective. You can't be objective because you're colored by your past. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a past which lacks piety, your tendency will be to always remove God from everything. Everything will prove there's no God. Right? Yeah. And if you have a past background of piety, more spiritual activity, everything will prove there is a God, and everything will motivate you to want to come closer. That's what the next verses are saying. Interesting, isn't it?
It's really interesting. I love how you're explaining it as well. It feels really practical. So I just I'm conscious of the time, Mahatma. Yeah. And I want to ask you.
I'm more conscious because I have to pick my daughter up at the airport. And I have to.
Oh, okay. What time do you have to go soon?
I have to get ready because we're going to stay overnight and I have to pack and finish. This all happened this morning. It was like the last minute. So I think I have to stop in a few minutes, but I can come back another time.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. I wanted to see if you wanted to try and summarize the last few verses, because there's some content here about this concept of demigods versus God, right? So that was at least one of the things I know that's in. I'm sure there's more in these verses that you can take us deeper into. And I wanted to ask if you were willing to come back, which you just said you are. That's fantastic, which means we can let's wrap up for today, allow you to go do your thing. And then there's no rush. We can come back and pick up where we've left off.
Look who's watching now. We have everyone who's watching, probably except maybe Veena, has experience with demigods. None of us do. You Veena, must have had some experience, right? Yes? Did you grow up with demigods?
You're still on mute, Veena. Oh, yeah, there you are.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Demigods of all sorts. I'm actually sitting in my mum's temple. I will show you where we have, I think, every god, demigod going. You can see we have hundreds and hundreds of deities.
Wow.
Deity
museum, yeah.
So obviously the main focus is the main man. The main man's nice. There. Yeah. But yes, I grew up with having to believe in demigods, but there came a point when I made up my own mind, and the main focus was Krishna.
Wow.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing that.
So
So beautiful.
So it's a very Indian oriented practice of, and there's There's good and bad to it, and there's reasons for it. Fortunately, most of us in the West don't even have to worry about it. Well, I guess now with the expansion of yoga, it's more of a concern because kirtans to all kinds of gods: Shiva, Durga, Ganesh, Ram. But maybe it's more relevant, to talk about who's who. Yeah.
Right, of course.
Maybe that's the next class. Who's who?
Yeah, there's some that what you're saying is this almost, it seems a little irrelevant because in the Western culture, we don't think about demigods. But at the same time, there's some relevance. Like you said, it's becoming more prominent. It's growing.
Yeah, like what's going on in the yoga circles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that next time. In the Bhakti tradition, because Bhakti means devotion and love, then when we do our worship, it's all to give and serve and not to take. Generally, the worship of demigods is to get something, or it's kind of like an insurance policy. Well, I better worship all of them because if I don't, maybe they'll get mad at me. And then disaster,
Right.
will come. And if I just worship them, it's kind of like, okay, we're kind of protected. So it's not devotion. It's more of a business deal.
Right.
You agree, Vina? It's kind of like insurance policy. I think a lot of children, when they inherit deities from their parents, they kind of feel like, well, we've worshipped these in our family, and if I don't worship them, then maybe that particular demigod's not going to be happy with me. But Krishna says, don't worry. Worship me, you'll be good. Good to go. By worshiping me, you're worshiping all the gods, because all the gods are worshiping me. So anyway, we can talk about it next time.
Yeah, we can unpack this whole thing. There's a whole thing there. I really appreciate you coming back again, Mahatma Prabhu, and thank you for being willing to come back again. I know you're busy. Really, Mahatma is so busy.
Especially today.
He's a spiritual teacher. Like you said, he speaks on a daily basis, and can't remember what he said where because he's always sharing knowledge. So we're very fortunate to have him with us. I should share my personal gratitude with you, and just very much looking forward to having you back with us again. Today was fantastic. So we'll be in touch. We'll let you go now. I know you have to run. And
it's a run out into the rain. Get ready.
Yeah, it was thundering here. It was storming here not long ago. It's sunny now.
Here also, yeah. We're sharing the same weather. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mahatma.
You're welcome.
And we'll be in touch. And
let me show you my shirt before I go.
Fantastic.
This is our company. And this is from Bhagavad Gita 9:30. And it's
Sadhu in progress. That's fantastic. Sadhu means saintly person, by the way.
This is a verse from Bhagavad Gita. You'll get to in the 9th chapter. Sadhu in progress, sorry for the inconvenience. So we're all works in progress.
Right.
And,
I'm not quite there yet.
You're trying to become saintly, more saintly. And as long as you're trying, then Krishna says, who's ever trying, we should see them as saintly.
I love that.
And sometimes they don't look saintly, but they're trying. So keep trying, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mahatma. Have a wonderful day, evening, and we'll speak soon.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna